Welcome, everyone, to Lakers Roundtable. I'm Mark Medina with the LA Times Lakers blog. While everyone is doing their last-minute holiday shopping, well, the season is just underway. Lakers open Christmas Day at Staples Center against the Chicago Bulls. I can't think of anyone better to debut our series of matchup previews than to bring in the esteemed Jordan Bernfield from WGN Radio. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Mark. I'm doing better now that I'm talking to you. How's that?
Well, Jordan, I understand you've been working around the clock. Are you like Bulls coach Tom Thibodeau or what?
Listen, nobody works as hard as that guy, but I'm trying to at least live up to what he does. I see his example, and I'm doing my best to try to heed his advice and work hard.
So you're a distant second behind him in terms of that grinding mentality?
I mean, that guy, I think, sleeps at the Berto Center. I haven't gotten to that point yet with my job, but if they put a cot in the studio, I think I could probably sleep here. I would just need my mail forwarded, but I think we could probably get that done.
Okay, well, we're going to show you how Jordan's grinding mentality and hard work ethic definitely pays off in his analysis. And obviously the big news heading into this game is Kobe Bryant. He has a torn ligament in his right wrist. He says he's going to play. His teammates believe he's going to play. The Bulls think he'll play, so he's playing. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But he could be less than fully healthy. How do the Bulls go about taking advantage of that possible vulnerability?
Well, I think that the way they do that, Mark, is by using Rip Hamilton. This is the guy that they brought in to be their two guard, their scorer, their secondary option to Derrick Rose. And I believe that if Rip Hamilton looks as good as he did in the second preseason game against the Pacers, I don't want to get ahead of myself and try to act like one preseason game means everything, but Derrick Rose and Rip Hamilton looked really good together. And I talked to Gar Forman last week, and I asked him how he believes that Derrick Rose and Rip Hamilton kind of complement each other. He thinks that they work well in many ways, and that's why they really felt like he was the best fit. They didn't want to bring in Jamal. No offense to Jamal. They just felt that the style of game that Rip Hamilton has really complements Derrick Rose and complements what Tom Thibodeau wants to do with his team defensively. So I think that it's through Rip Hamilton. If Kobe's a little slow and he's not able to score, maybe the Bulls two guard, who is a pretty solid defensive player, can come out and have a good game and help Derrick Rose score because you know Derrick's going to get his. And if the Bulls are able to do that, I think that they have a pretty good shot against the Lakers.
Well, take me through Rip Hamilton's arrival. I mean, what did you see in that preseason game that made you see that he's going to be this great fit in terms of providing that complement to Rose and fitting into what Thibodeau wants in his system?
Well, in the one game that we saw, Mark, I think that when you look at a guy like Rip Hamilton, he's on the wrong side of 30, so that's always a question. It's how fast is he going to be? But Derrick Rose said that there were times when he felt like Rip was running faster down the court than he was. And we know how quick that Derrick Rose is. Now, will he be able to do that all season, especially with the grueling schedule that's going to be the NBA this year? Probably not, but Rip Hamilton showed that he could hit a three ball. He looked good on the baseline. He was able to post up. He was able to get some rebounds and follow his shot. I like the way he looked offensively, and I just think that he's the type of player that understands what the Bulls are trying to do. He came from Detroit where they were very defensive-minded over the last 8 years or so, and Rip was a big part of that. So I just think that he's going to fit in very well with this team. Now, are there some adjustments to make? Of course there are, and I think with any NBA team, there's going to be some kind of a transition period for him just to get to know his teammates because he's only been with the Bulls for just over a week. But I think it's just going to be a good fit for what Derrick Rose needs. And I think that, Mark, when you look at last year in the playoffs and what the Bulls were, a lot of people point to that Indiana series and they say, well, they didn't really play well against the Pacers, and I agree with that. I don't think that the Bulls players would tell you that they had a really good series against Indiana. But I think that the reason was that Derrick had to do maybe too much offensively. The one game when they blew out the Pacers was one in which Keith Bogans hit 5 3-pointers. And obviously you're not going to get that kind of an effort from Keith Bogans. That's why he was ultimately waived. Keith Bogans was really there to be a defensive-minded player. But when they had somebody hitting shots, taking pressure off of Rose, you saw how dynamic the Bulls were, and they absolutely torched their opponent. Now, is Rip Hamilton going to hit 5 threes a game? Of course not. But if he's able to give you somewhere around 14 to 18 points per game and is able to be that secondary scoring option and give you something not only at the perimeter but at the baseline and being a catch-and-shoot guy, which Rip Hamilton is one of the best guys in the league, I think, at that. He's going to take a lot of pressure off of Rose, and I think take pressure off of Carlos Boozer, too, who statistically had a good year last year but did have his struggles in the playoffs. So I think it's a good move, and I think it'll end up working out.
We're talking with WGN Radio's Jordan Bernfield. You can follow him on Twitter. You go by your first and last name pretty much, Jordan Bernfield, right? I mean, you're a franchise name at this point.
I don't know about that, but it's at Jordan Bernfield, and thank you for the plug. I'm definitely a follower of LAT Medina. At Jordan Bernfield.
Thanks for the plug there.
Yes, well, Bernfield with an E, not a U, so Bernfield. But if you would like some Bulls news, some random news of Chicago sports, you can come to me for things like that, I suppose.
Well, thanks for that clarification. So you mentioned, obviously, this frees up Derrick Rose, and his talent speaks for itself, and the commitment that he has to the team speaks for itself. He signed that 5-year, $94.8 million extension to remain with the Bulls through at least the 2016-17 season.
That's what you're getting paid at the Times, right? $94.8 million?
At least. I mean, We're not supposed to talk terms, but since you threw it out there,
you can confirm those rumors?
I can confirm those rumors,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously Derrick Rose is one of the top players in the league, but how do you see him building off of what he's already built?
Because he's really motivated, Mark. When you ask him about the type of player he is, he always talks about how he wants to be known as a winner. And after signing that contract, I was over at the press conference at the Berto Center, and he just kept bringing up that he wants to be a winner. He wants to win a title in Chicago. Remember, this kid is from Inglewood, a guy who grew up in this city. He understands this city. He knows what the impact of Michael Jordan was in this city and how much the Bulls were an important part of the 1990s in this city. And the Bulls have certainly had some moments over the last few years, certainly last year getting back to the Eastern Conference Finals with Rose. But if he can lead them back to an NBA title, it will help cement his legacy, not only as an NBA basketball player, but in Chicago. He's one of the most popular athletes in this city right now, if not the most popular athlete in this city. And if he wins a title, it's only going to escalate him. This is a guy who has been working on post moves and wants to improve that part of his game. Earlier in his career when he struggled to shoot from three, he's gotten a lot better at that. You saw last season. I think it's sort of like, not to compare him to Michael because it's really hard to ever do that, especially in this city. But when you look at the type of player that he is, I think that he's just going to continue to add to his game every year. Michael, during his career, was able to do that, whether it was on the defensive end, when he started to lead the league in steals, when he improved his shooting. I think that Rose is the type of player that's going to want to make himself an all-around great player in all aspects. I mean, you see it with Kobe, you see it with Dwayne Wade, you see it with LeBron, you see it with all the best players. I think that that's no different for Derrick Rose, and I think that he's going to be a guy who's going to try to get that Bulls team to an NBA title any way he can and will his team to a championship. Now, are they good enough to win it this year? I'm not sure. I think that the Heat's addition of Shane Battier was huge. I still think there are some very tough teams in the West, but I think that when it's all said and done, Derrick Rose will have an NBA title to his name to only cement what he's already become.
So I'm looking at this Lakers-Bulls matchup here, and so Andrew Bynum serving the beginning of a 5-game suspension. He threw that forearm on Dallas guard J.J. Barea last season in Game 4 of the Western Conference semifinals. Pau Gasol sliding to center. They're bringing Josh McRoberts in at power forward. They don't even know who's starting at the 3. That's between feisty veteran Matt Barnes and second-year player Devin Ebanks. Yeah, and they've just lost Lamar Odom. Is it fair to say at this point it seems like the Bulls on paper actually have more talent than the Lakers right now?
It's an interesting question, Mark. I'm not sure. I think that the Bulls are probably a deeper team than the Lakers. I would give you that. And I also think that, the loss of Lamar Odom hurts the Lakers in the sense, and you obviously know this team better than I do, but just from watching from afar, I think one of the Lakers' greatest assets the last few years was having 3 7-footers, and when everybody was healthy, just having an incredible size advantage against their opponents. Now, the Bulls did lose Kurt Thomas. I think that they're going to need some help with their big men. I think they're hoping that Omer Asik will improve his game and be more of a factor on the second tier. But, I think that the Bulls, one of the reasons why many people are so high on them this year is not only the 62-20 record that they had last season, but their depth. So I think that, pound for pound in terms of the entire roster, I think the Bulls stack up with any team in the NBA, but I also think that the Lakers have some great proven talent. I mean, how can you really bet against Kobe? And Pau Gasol has been obviously excellent for you guys, and when Andrew Bynum is healthy, he's obviously an excellent player on the interior. So I think that losing Lamar Odom hurts your depth a little bit, and maybe the Bulls do have more talent overall now.
Okay, so just in the short term, though, without Bynum there, without Lamar there.
By the way, with Lamar gone, does that mean that the Kardashian story takes a back seat there?
I think they're going to Dallas.
Right,
they're going to Dallas.
How is that going to work? I mean, is the whole family picking up and moving, or just Chloe?
That's my understanding. Chloe's wearing Mavericks colors. They might be hanging out with Mark Cuban now. They're not in the lower bowls of Staples Center anymore. That's for sure.
Well, I think that the Mark Cuban factor will probably be interesting for the show. I can say I've only seen that show once, so I'm not really versed on the whole Chloe and Lamar thing.
I tried watching it because, the reporter in me thought, okay, it's Chloe and Lamar. There's going to be some Laker tidbits or news in there that maybe aren't revealed in practice. No, it was just all about Chloe saying, Lamar, why are you telling Playboy you think I'm big or fat? And, you don't think I'm pretty enough for you. And by the second episode, I stopped watching.
You checked out. That's all right.
I checked out.
But that's what being an LA reporter, that's one of the benefits. You have to watch shows like that for your job. We don't really have any reality shows here for which you will find any Chicago athletes. The closest thing we had to that was that MLB Network special featuring the White Sox. But other than that, we've got nothing.
So the reality is that this is obviously going to be easier for Boozer and Joakim Noah and Luol Deng, in the short term. How do they go about taking advantage of that depleted front line that the Lakers are going to have to open the season?
Well, I mean, I think that they're going to have to spread the floor and use the weapons that they have. Certainly, Derrick Rose, all the moves that he has and all the abilities he has as a scorer, whether it's as a slasher, as a shooter now, and now using Rip Hamilton to spread the floor and distribute the ball. And I also think, listen, you brought Carlos Boozer in there to be a guy who's going to be able to score from the post. They're obviously going to want to do that. I think that this is an interesting matchup, obviously, because I think that the two teams have different strengths offensively and defensively, but hopefully what the Bulls are able to do, especially with Kobe Bryant limited, are able to get more of their points from the perimeter and then try to find holes on the inside if they spread the defense out. I would think that that's probably one of the strategies for them. But as it always is with the Bulls, Mark, they want to keep the Lakers from scoring. So it's one of the better defensive teams in the NBA, and the Bulls are going to be a team that hustles and tries to get in passing lanes and tries to keep you under 85 points. And certainly if the Bulls are able to do that, that is to their advantage.
We're talking with WGN Radio's Jordan Bernfield, and I just got a few quick questions here. You, earlier in the segment, had expressed some conflicted feelings as far as, with how much better the Bulls has become since last season. You still sounded a little unsure how they may match up with Miami and maybe some of the top teams in the West. How do you see that playing out?
Well, it's not that I don't think that the Bulls are potentially better. Certainly with Rip Hamilton, you have a great upgrade at the two-guard position. But you have to remember, last year's Bulls team won 62 games. So to be much better, and how many more wins are you realistically going to have? Now, as you get to, if you potentially reach the Eastern Conference Finals again against the Miami Heat, I think that's clearly the other great team in the Eastern Conference. Are they going to beat them? I'm not sure. That was a tough series for the Bulls last year, and one that ended in kind of stunning fashion in Game 5, in which the Bulls were winning, and then the Heat kind of stole the game late. So I just think that the Bulls set the bar high in terms of their success last season, that while I think they may have a better team with the addition of Hamilton, it's just going to be hard to exceed what they did. Now, you obviously want to be able to match up well with the Heat in an Eastern Conference Finals, and I think that they match up better now than they did, but are they going to beat the Heat, assuming that's what they get to in the Eastern Conference Finals? I don't know. I think it would be a really tough series. It's not that necessarily that I don't think that the Bulls could potentially be better than last year, but the bar was set high, so we'll see where it goes. I'm not to lack a bold prediction here, but I just think it's a tough, it's tough to match those expectations.
Okay, well, to steal a line from Office Space, this is a hypothetical in case we go to Vegas.
Any Bob Slidell reference is good.
Where do you put? We go. This is a hypothetical, as I said before. The Bob said that in Office Space.
Yes.
We go to Vegas. Where do you put your money on with the Bulls and Heat if they meet up in the East Finals?
Boy, I don't know. I can't be betting here, Mark. I mean, I don't have enough money to be betting. I don't know. I think right now I still think the Heat have the slight advantage, but I think that the Bulls are right there. I think it would be a real neck-and-neck series if the two teams ended up meeting in the Eastern Conference Finals. But it might be unfair for us to just assume those are going to be the two teams that are there. There's a whole NBA season to be played. How it's going to play out, we don't know yet. But I think at this point, those would be the two logical options to try to get back there. I think the Celtics are certainly a team that will try to have a say in that, and maybe an Eastern Conference team surprises next year. But right now, I think it's going to be very difficult, but I think that the Heat are slightly better at this point.
Those are the thoughts of WGN Radio's Jordan Bernfield. Jordan, thanks for coming on, and get another cup of coffee or maybe some sleep after we're done.
I'm going to do that, Mark, and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, and it's always a lot of fun to get to talk to you.
Well, it's my pleasure as well.